Hi, Chemistry. Mrs. KJ here, going over lesson 7.03, functional groups. So functional groups is our first vocab word, atom or specific group of atoms that determines properties of a molecule. In general, the reactive part of a molecule added to the molecule. So make sure you hit pause, get that all written down. So let's take a look at your cheat sheet. On your cheat sheet, we have a bunch of functional groups. Now, as you remember, we already talked about alkanes, which have what kind of bonds? Single. Alkenes, which have what kind of bonds? Double. And alkynes, which have, of course, triple bonds. Now, if you notice, there's these blue dots at the end, and they're kind of all over on here. So that's an open spot for molecules to bond with functional groups. Now, sometimes more and more carbons and hydrogens just keep bonding together, hundreds of them. But for molecules to be different, they need to have something different about them besides single, double, and triple bonds. That's where these other groups come in. So for example, let's say onto this alkane, a carbon bonded, and on that was a double bonded oxygen. And carbon needs 4 bonds, so all right, we put a hydrogen on there too. So what did I just add? So it's kind of like a search and find puzzle. So we look around, double bonded, oh, double bonded, OH, nope, just double bonded with an H. So I added an aldehyde. So this chemical is now not only an alkane, but it also reacts like an aldehyde. And that's going to be different than, let's say I added on let's put a C and an NH2 and an N. Can you find what I just added on? So look through all of our choices, and I added an amine. So these functional groups, all of these are functional groups. They're different choices that I can add onto a molecule, and the molecule is now going to be a different kind of molecule and have different chemical and physical properties. Again, you don't have to memorize any of these because they are on your cheat sheet. Now, next I want to specifically talk about alcohols being added on. So an alcohol is a hydroxyl group. Now, when we talked about bases, we talked about hydroxide, which was OH negative. This is simply OH. And if we look here, we have our alcohol group right there. When I add on an hydroxyl, or I make it an alcohol, I have different properties. So let's look. If I have methane, the normal boiling point is negative 164 degrees Celsius. But if I simply add an OH, now my boiling point is 65. That's over 200 degrees difference. That's a huge difference. Ethane, negative 89. Ethanol, you've probably heard of ethanol with fuels, becomes positive 79. Propane, negative 42, propanol, positive 97. So one of the biggest changes we can see is the boiling point changes. All right, and then they show you the formulas down here as well. Now, again, you don't have to memorize this. The big idea is that we can obviously see a change in a property. The other thing I just want to tell you is this one in front, that just tells you where the functional group, in this case, the alcohol, was added. So in this case, it was added to the first carbon. Now here, if we look at this one, isopropanol, it's added to the first to the second carbon. So that's going to react differently than plain old propanol, which has it in the first spot. So that's another thing that's going to make a difference, is where the functional group is added. And that's what we use these little numbers out front for. So one or many hydroxyl groups can be on a molecule for an alcohol. Examples, isopropanol or phenol are different types of disinfectants. Methanol is a fuel. Polyethylene glycol is an antifreeze. Let's break this down. Poly means many. Eth means how many. 2. En tells me what kind of bond is there. A double bond. And then ethanol, for example, kills bacteria. And that's also the type, for example, in drinks. So again, a functional group, in this example, alcohol, will change the physical and chemical properties. of a compound. In this case, we talked about boiling point. And it also depends on where the functional group is added. It's added to the first carbon, second carbon, maybe it's added to the third or fourth carbon, depending on how big it is. So again, this one is sec butanol versus tert, as in tertiary butanol. So it all has to do with where the functional group is added, and that changes the property, along with which functional group is added for a change in the property. All right, super short one for once, but lots of good information. And again, make sure you are using your cheat sheet.